Well, hello everyone. This is Boomer Life Lessons and Stories, and I'm Dr. Ryan. I'm glad to be with you today. You know, it's been kind of a cloudy day here in North Texas, but we still endeavor to get the job done, as I'm sure that everyone does as well. I do hope you're practicing good, safe social distancing. We're going to be talking about today something a little different, and it happened in my career in the aerospace and defense industry. The name of this episode, and it's episode number 45, is The Absence of Badness is Evidence of Goodness. Really? Before we go there and open up that can of worms, would you please like, share, and subscribe? That would help me immensely with the YouTube algorithm, and we will go forward and maybe help others by reaching others by broadening our audience. Thank you so much for doing that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this new episode. The absence of badness is evidence of goodness. When was this statement made to me, and why was it made to me? Now, it sounds like a theological type of discussion, doesn't it? But this has nothing to do with theology. This is all about business. And as a matter of fact, it's about designing, developing, and reviewing the designs and development of complex hardware and software systems, right? This was on a $300 million project, which had perhaps near 1,000 people working on that project to develop some complex systems for our customer. And we were in something called a preliminary design review. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with the development of complex systems, you know, you start with an idea, you scratch on a Snicker wrapper. It does happen on occasion. You hear the stories from your customer. They kind of tell you what their needs are. And then you kind of translate all that into a product or service that is helpful and meaningful to them. And it's not as all easy as all that. There's a lot of hard work and critical thinking that goes into it. But in any case, we had come upon our preliminary design review with this customer, and it was a quite extensive design review. I think it covered about 2.5 days, literally, of constant presenting pieces and parts and how the system would play together and how we're meeting the requirements and so forth. It was a rigorous 2.5 days. Wasn't even the design review, right? And we got through the meeting with a few action items. None of them really super critical. Critical action items are full stop. You can't go forward in your program until you've answered and corrected or provided a path forward to correct whatever it is that the critical action items written around. But most of the action items that we got were medium or low level type actions. So we were kind of trying to wrap up the meeting, satisfy and answer the questions that the customer had there at the end. And everybody was making closing statements and getting up and thanking those and everything. And one of my managers got up and he looks directly at the customer and he makes this statement. He says, "Well, I guess the absence of badness is evidence of goodness." Oh my goodness. I thought, where did that come from? And why would he say anything like that in a meeting like this? But you know, I've thought about that statement quite a bit that he made in the meeting. And by the way, it got quite a bit of laughter from their side and after that, our side. But I know what he was trying to say. He was trying to say, we didn't see anything that we couldn't overcome. It looks like we're good to go completing the design and holding our critical design review, which is the first step, the last step before we actually start building the hardware and bringing the hardware and software together. But it came out like something out of left field. The absence of badness is evidence of goodness. But, you know, I've thought about that statement quite a bit ever since I heard it. Now, it does have theological roots, and there's all sorts of ways of saying the statement. But I think perhaps a better way of having said it would have been the absence of evidence of a bad design is evidence of a good design, but he didn't say it that way, right? And logically, that's not necessarily so. The absence of any evidence of badness is not really good evidence of goodness. I kind of used good twice, didn't I? But it's not really evidence of goodness in the design. And we're talking about complex hardware software systems that take years to develop and then that take a lot of monitoring and support when they're used out in the field. But we thought about it hard. And this customer was quite a difficult customer. As a matter of fact, this customer was very aggressive in trying to pull out of the company more functionality than what was contracted to be delivered. And they were always looking at ways to kind of hammer the program and put the program at a disadvantage so that they could extract more value than they were paying for. And I suppose in a nice way, I would have tried to have done the same thing because that's what customers do. But we, on the business side, the development side, had to protect the customer's profit margins. I mean, not the customer, our profit margins. If we gave the customer everything they wanted above and beyond what was contracted for, we would not have made any money. And if a company doesn't make any money, that's a recipe for going out of business, right? So you can see the ramifications there. But this idea has stuck with me. The absence of badness is evidence of goodness when it comes to developing complex critical systems that are full of hardware and software. I'm now on the fence about it. Previously, at the time, I was in total opposition. I thought it was a ridiculous statement, and I did laugh about it, but I did it, not in front of my manager because he was serious when he said it. But after going through the rest of my career, where I advanced and was part and parcel to some very significant system developments, and I saw the goodness that came out of it and some of the bad things that we had to correct, mistakes and so forth, I kind of think I know and understand what he was saying. And this centers around meeting the customer's requirements. And another part of that story is on a different program. One of my employees came and he was advocating that we deliver all that we could possibly deliver in terms of goodness to the customer. And I pushed back on that by saying, we can't possibly do that. We need to deliver exactly what the customer asked for, and we must just meet the requirements that he gave us that described the system. And this particular individual, kind of, I guess, acting like I did, was a bit offended by that. You don't just meet the requirements, you go above and beyond. And my answer to that is simply no. When you are in a contractual basis and the customer has contracted you to design, develop, and build and field and even support perhaps the systems that you build and develop for them, you cannot give them more than the contract asked for. Because if you give them more than the contract asked for, many things happen, but one thing in particular happens. You erode the profitability of the company. Now, why is that such a critical thing? If you erode the profitability of the company by giving the customer more than they contracted for, it's going to cause you greater expense, greater time, and a greater chance of having problems in the giving of the more functionality. And therefore, you could put the company in a losing stance, making no profit. And you know what profit is? I know people sometimes get really upset about hearing how companies make profit, but profit is the blood of the future success of the company. And the reason why I say that is simply this. Without profit, you can't allocate funds to do more research and development. Research and development requires people, and it requires specialized tools to go and create something that wasn't possible before or that didn't exist before. It takes money, time, and effort and resources. And if you have no extra money, profit, to allocate to that sort of activity, you will not develop new products. and new services. And you know what happens when you're not developing new products and new services on a continual basis? You spiral down out of business because your current products and services obsolesce right out of the needs of the customer. The customer has no more need for them. And therefore, if you're not selling any products or services, the company's not making any money and it can't pay the bills. And therefore, it begins to downsize and laying people off until it has to close all the doors, turn off all the lights, and the last person out locks the door. So profit is the lifeblood of companies, and you have to meet the intent of the contract and nothing more. So sometimes if you could offer more, that gives program management a chance to negotiate to get something from the customer. It might be, they might be able to charge more. They might be able to get a trade, which means they might get a lightening up of a stringent requirement that was going to be problematic. But program management then has options if you are able to deliver more that are not part of the contract. It gives them something to do, a let's make a deal sort of a game with the customer. It's not really a game, it's all seriousness, but what it is the trade of value for value. And what we hope to do as business is trade value, give the customer exactly what they want and get value back that is more than what it took us to develop the system. And that more becomes profit, and the profit then turns into allocations for plant expansions, hiring more people, doing more research and development, on and on and on we can go. And eventually, because most of you are stockholders, paying dividends, a share of the company's earnings to the owners. So when my manager said at the end of the meeting, and we hadn't had anything critical come out of it that was not fixable, right? When he said the absence of badness is evidence of goodness, I think what he was intending to mean is that it looks like we met the intent so far. Where we are today in the schedule on the contract, we've met the intent of what it is you would have us to do. And you know, that's a good thing. If there's absence of badness, meaning evidence of goodness, we're on track to meet our commitments. And meeting your commitments in business is everything, because companies can be very, very good, but if they develop a bad reputation for not meeting commitments, big commitments, little commitments, customers are going to flock to the competition. And again, we're in a Darwinian environment. If the competition steals our customers, they will adapt and survive, and our company will die out because we become fossils. We were not able to do the right thing in satisfying our customers and keeping them happy. So with that, my friends, I thought it would be an interesting little story to tell you about my introduction to the statement, the absence of badness is evidence of goodness. Really, there's more to it than that, but I'll leave that to another episode, and perhaps we'll have a discussion on the goodness that society does out in general and the badness that sometimes comes our way. Be good, be happy, take care of yourselves and your family, because what else is there? That's what it is all about. And I will see you in the next episode. All the best.